Hello. Yes, just I am ready.
everyone. I am Dr. G. Sudhakaraya, the convener of this webinar, and I warmly welcome you all to the final day of the 5-day National Webinar-cum-Faculty Development Program on Advanced Research Methodology and Data Analysis in the Digital Age, organized by the Department of Commerce from October 22nd to 26th, 2024. Instructions for the participants. Before we begin, I kindly ask all participants to keep your audio muted and your video turned off to minimize disturbance. Thank you for your cooperation. To commence our final day, let us invoke divine blessings with a prayer song. I would like to invite Sister Bhagya to lead us.
చూసేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా, మమ్ము కాచేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా. చూసేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా, మమ్ము కాచేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా. నీవు లేక మేము లేమయ్యా, నీవు లేక మేము లేమయ్యా. నీవే మాకు చాలు యేసయ్యా, నీవే మాకు చాలు యేసయ్యా. చూసేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా, మమ్ము కాచేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా. సూర్యుని కంటే కాంతివంతుడవు, చంద్రుని కంటే చల్లని వాడవు. సూర్యుని కంటే కాంతివంతుడవు, చంద్రుని కంటే చల్లని వాడవు. హృదయమును ఎరిగిన నిజ దేవుడవు, హృదయమును ఎరిగిన నిజ దేవుడవు. హృదయమునందు నివసించువాడవు, హృదయమునందు నివసించువాడవు. చూసేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా, మమ్ము కాచేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా. లోకుల కంటే శక్తివంతుడవు, లోకాల నేలే రాజాతి రాజువు. లోకుల కంటే శక్తివంతుడవు, లోకాల నేలే రాజాతి రాజువు. భారమును మోసిన బలవంతుడవు, భారమును మోసిన బలవంతుడవు. అక్కరలు తీర్చి ఐశ్వర్యవంతుడవు, అక్కరలు తీర్చి ఐశ్వర్యవంతుడవు. చూసేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా, మమ్ము కాచేవాడవు నీవేనయ్యా.
Thank you, Sister Bhagya, for that beautiful invocation. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed resource person for today's session, Professor Shanmugam Amilan, Head of the Department of Commerce at Pondicherry University. Professor Amilan brings with him 28 years of professional experience in university level teaching. His impressive academic journey includes roles as a reader in commerce at Pondicherry University and Alagappa University, along with guest faculty positions. He has also held several significant administrative positions, including Head of the Department of Commerce, Pondicherry University, Member of the Court and Academic Council at Pondicherry University, Warden at Boys Hostel, Karaikal Campus, Member in Inspection Committee for University Affiliation to Colleges, Center Head in Karaikal Campus, Pondicherry University, Senate Member in Bharati Dasan University, Tiruchirappalli, served as subject expert in the faculty selection in universities, University Representative of Faculty Selection Committee of Affiliated Colleges of the University, Administrative Board Member to many colleges affiliated of Pondicherry University, Member of various committees including anti-discrimination and inspection committees. His contributions to academia include organizing 23 programs, completing major research projects on women empowerment and microfinance, and publishing 40 research papers in national and international journals. Additionally, he has guided 7 PhDs and 27 MPhil theses. We are honored to have you with us, Professor Amilan. I now invite you to share your insights on systematic literature review and overview. We welcome you, sir, and I request you to take over the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's fine. That's fine. So, first of all, I congratulate the college for organizing this kind of faculty development program, especially using technology developments that are taking place nowadays. Earlier, if you want to conduct a seminar or a workshop, the resource persons have to travel a lot and they have to reach the organization. But now, with the help of technology, anything can be conducted without much difficulty, and therefore, this kind of webinar can be conducted frequently, and which would definitely help the research scholars and researchers, those who are doing research in the field of social sciences, especially in commerce and management. So that way, I heartily congratulate the college for having chosen this path of integrating technology in conducting seminars or workshops or FDPs like this, and that would be cost effective and also effective in delivering the lectures. And second thing, I thank the organizers for having invited me for this kind of faculty development programs. So this is an opportunity for me to interact and learn from the participants also. It's the process of learning together. That means normally I used to say, in case of conducting FDPs, it is not only a process where the resource person would deliver the knowledge or resource person would be delivering a lecture. Rather, it is the process of learning together. That means by the way of discussing with the scholars and other participants, it would be easy for every one of us to gain better knowledge, and that way it is an opportunity for me to interact with young minds as well as experienced people, so that will be benefiting me also. So for this opportunity, I thank the organizer for inviting me to this kind of 5-day national Webinar-cum-Faculty development program. The topic of this today presentation is, or topic of my presentation is, it's going to be something on literature review. any research that we are going to take place or that we are doing in commerce or commerce in particular and social sciences in general, we would go for the review of literature. But the problem with respect to reviewing literature is many of us do it mechanically, something like we take the research works that are published and using those research works abstract, we prepare a chapter called as review of literature. So that is, of course, that is the traditional approach, but nowadays several developments have taken place in the field of reviewing the literature, and that is the reason why this topic, systematic literature review and overview, gains kind of importance or prominence. So after my presentation, I expect this would help you to understand what are all the steps involved in conducting various types of literature reviews. That means when we think about literature review, what are all the steps involved in that? It is not the traditional type of thing, something like taking abstract or taking the research paper and reading it, writing an abstract of that. No, it is not like that. What are the steps involved in conducting various types of literature reviews, especially when we want to publish research papers in peer-reviewed or indexed journals? Then another thing we have to understand, or another thing I am expecting to deliver is what are the various types of literature reviews as well as differences in the methodology and structure. Something like when we talk about literature review, there are different varieties. In those varieties of literature review, what are all the differences that we can see, especially in its method, in their methodology and the structure? These two things which we want to know, or these two aspects would be the focus of my presentation. So before getting into further details, let me share the PPT which I have prepared for this particular lecture. Just a minute, I'll share it. So I hope that the screen is visible and what I'm sharing is also visible.
Yes, sir. Visible.
And that's fine. That's fine. So now these are the two things which I wanted to cover. But with respect to the first portion, we should understand what is a literature review. Without knowing what is the literature review, we cannot proceed further. Therefore, what is the literature review? How the traditional literature review is being carried out? That is what we are moving on to. The first thing, a literature review is an account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. That means, in the case of literature review, what we do is usually we select all the relevant research papers which are published by scholars and researchers, and we try to give an account of all those research papers, either in the form of paragraphs after paragraphs or in a way a combined page kind of thing. So that is how it becomes an account of what has already been published by the accredited research scholars or scholars and researchers. This literature review or literature, what we want to do or what we are trying to get from that is a sense of what we know or what we do not know. That's it. By reviewing earlier literature, what we are trying to do is we are trying to extract what we know from the earlier research works and what we do not know. That's it. Very simple thing. So these are all the two things which we have been doing in the case of the earlier literature works. So ultimately, by reading all the research papers or by studying all the research papers which are already published by accredited research scholars, what we try to do is what they have done, and ultimately based on that what they have not done. That's it. That means we are trying to get an information something like what we know from their earlier research works and what we do not know about a particular issue that we are talking about or that we are going to research about. So that way we are understanding from the historical perspective only. So a literature review which may lead to identification of the gap. That means from the earlier research work which you have reviewed or which you are reading or which you are studying, we are trying to find out what they have not done. That gives us an idea about what is to be done in the future. And also this kind of review reveals us some form of redundancy. That means what earlier research works have been done, how far that they have become redundant in the present day context, or how the research issue has been changed, or how the present research issues are existing. Based on that, if you look into the past research works, how the past research works are redundant, that kind of redundancy also we are trying to reveal with the help of reviewing the literature. So this helps us to understand what all the overlapping things are there in the ideas, theories, methodologies, and that lead to recognition of your need for critical review and evaluation. That means by reviewing all these research works, simply we are finding out the gap earlier, but that is not the case. We have to do further. That is the reason why a systematic literature review is required. Now just we will try to understand the significance of a review of literature. When we do literature review, traditionally we try to find out, or traditionally it gives us a solid background for investigation of the research being conducted. That means we try to find out the background. Under what background we are trying to do a research work, or on what background or with what background earlier research works have been carried out. This provides us a solid background for the investigation being conducted in a research. Second thing is, or second significance, otherwise you can say importance of the literature review of literature is, it tries to summarize and synthesize the arguments and ideas of others without adding new contributions. Actually, in our earlier literature review, what we are trying to do is, as I told you, we collect the related research works, we review it, we summarize it, and we synthesize it, and we say, yes, these are all the contributions of the earlier research works. That's it. We don't go anything beyond that. And in that process, there is a possibility of including those research works which are essentially close to me or which are essentially liked by myself. That way, earlier research or review of literature works would have some amount of biasness. That is the reason why there is a need for a systematic literature review which would lead to unbiased research, So this kind of literature review, otherwise you can say the traditional literature review, which are having these kind of lacunae, despite that, it has to be carried out in a serious manner for the conventional research theses. So conventional research theses will have a literature review, that is true, but while doing so, we are supposed to think of certain aspects. Number one is, we are supposed to go for a comprehensive literature review by going for sub-classifications, maybe by identifying sub-classifications like authors who are supporting a particular view. That means they might have done research works on the influence of company fundamentals on the equity price or on the equity returns. They might have taken a lot of company fundamentals like profitability ratios, solvency ratios, liquidity ratios, turnover ratios, Even market-based measures like PB ratio, price book rate, the PE ratio, something like that they might have taken, and they would have said these are all the factors or these are all the variables which are influencing. These are all the variables which are influencing the equity returns or equity price, something like that. So many people would have carried out research works in that way, either in the same industry or in the same country or considering different countries or in the same, what you can say, same environment, like that. So authors who are supporting these kind of findings can be grouped together and you can review them. That way you will get, in the traditional review, you will get authors who are supporting a particular point of view. Second thing, second classification can be authors who are not supporting, not establishing the linkages on the view. Something like many people might have carried out research work in different contexts, on different environments, or in the different sector, or in the different industries, but the research issue that they have taken may be the same thing. That means influence of company specific fundamentals on equity returns. In that case, these people might have established, or these people might have concluded that there is no linkage between these kind of company fundamentals and the equity return or the equity price. So now there are two views. There are two views. Authors who have supported or who have proved, authors who have not established these kind of views or this kind of relationship. And some people might have proved something like, no, there is no linkage at all. So authors, those who have proved that there is a link or there is an influence. Authors who have not evidence, or those who have not showed any evidence that there is a strong linkage. Authors who have disproved that there is no link at all. Otherwise you can say they have proved that there is no link at all. This way we can classify, or we can go for sub-classification and do the literature review. Then after doing this, we can go for synthesizing all these analysis sections. That means by reviewing these subgroups, we may go for a synthesis of all these things and find out what should be the argument for our research topic. So this way, if you do that, the earlier traditional literature review would be somewhat better. Otherwise, you can say literature review that we are conventionally that what we are doing can be improved in this manner. That means we can, instead of going for listing out all the research works just like that in the chronological order, if you are able to make sub-classifications, something like based on authors who have proved it, based on authors who have not proved it, based on authors who have not neither disproved or not proved it, something like that, or any other kind of classification, need not be in this way itself. You can go for any kind of classification suitable for your research work. And if you do that kind of grouping, that means sub-classification, and make a systematic comparison among these 3 groups or 4 groups, whatever it is, if you do that, then that synthesis will help you to identify what should be the argument for your research work. That is the best way of doing conventional, that is the good way of doing conventional literature review. In this case, there is a method suggested by Garrett's. Garrett's matrix method is the method which is suggested by Garrett's. In that, he says, when you are doing a research literature, when you are doing a literature survey and do a literature review, what you do is, you keep folders. This way also you can do that. This way also you can do that. You keep folders of all these things, all these 4 folders, wherein what are all the sources from which you are getting the related research works. Group them into 4 categories or 5 categories, whatever it is. Suppose if you are getting some information from the internet, select those details or those research papers or those concept papers or those, what you can say, some theoretical papers, take them and put it in internet folder. Then gray literature. This gray literature is nothing but the literature that is not available in the published form or which are not available in the, what you can say, research journals or periodicals. They are called as gray literature. maybe research reports, research papers presented in the conferences, reports which are available in the academia, or research which are available in the research institutions, or research which are available in World Bank, or that kind of reports which are available but are not published in the journals or magazines, something like that, which we can easily access. They are called as grey literature. So those grey literature, how much or what are all the research work that you have taken, that you can collect and put it in the grey literature data, grey literature folder. Then go and find out some databases which are available to us. Databases in the sense, for example, if I go to Scopus, if you are an authorized subscriber of Scopus, you can download umpteen number of research papers without much difficulty. If you give any title, that it will give you the paper itself. So you can download those papers and you can put all those papers in the databases. For example, Scopus, I said, Science Direct is having, Sage Publications is having, Taylor and Francis is having. So if you go for these kind of databases, you can collect all those databases and put it into these kind of databases folders. That is another thing. Then other sources which you are searching, of course, there may be some other sources also which you may come across. In addition to that, some of the research work which you are getting with the help of expert consultation. If you are consulting a research supervisor, your research supervisor, or a doctoral committee member, or research advisory committee member, or some other expert who are working in some other institutions, those things you can collect and you can put it in another folder. So if you do that, you will be able to get 5 sources of your research, early research works. So you might have collected the research works from the internet sources, from grey literature, or from the available databases, or other sources, expert consultation. From expert consultation also you may get a paper. So that way, if you put it in all these 5 folders, that becomes your collection of research work related to your topic or your research issue that you have taken for your PhD work or paper work, whatever it is. So in that case, 5 folders are available with you. Now you can review it. For this reviewing, there are several softwares which are available now. You can make use of those softwares, mainly Papers, Quika, Zotero, Sente. All these kind of softwares are available, which will make your work very easier, I would say. Not easy, it would make your work easier than manually doing it. Something like if you read the paper continuously, and if you want to take notes, and then if you want to find out whether it is relevant for you or not, all these things are very difficult. But if you use mainly these kind of softwares, it will be easy. But explaining all these things beyond the scope of this particular 1.5 hour presentation, therefore I am not going for that. Just understand, mainly will be a good source. Nowadays it is used by most of the PhD scholars in many institutions, so you can go for that. Zotero also is used by many scholars, so you can make use of these things for the commerce and management research works. In the case of collecting the literature and keeping it 5 folders, I told you, no, nowadays you can search literature in several ways. To do the conventional literature review, you can use several sources. For those sources, in those sources, how to search the literature related to you. That is what I am explaining here. That is what is the presentation in this part, in this slide. The first thing is, when you want to select some conceptual papers, first try to select some conceptual papers which are relevant for your topic or the research issue that you wanted to explore. Go to any digital library. If you give the search with some information related to your research work, it will give you a lot of published relevant research works, including journals. That will help you to understand some conceptual papers. Those conceptual papers, if you read it thoroughly, you will be understand, or you will be able to get some keywords which are essential for your research works. Then what you do is, you go to the databases. As I told you, you can use any kind of databases which are available. For example, Emerald is having all the research papers or all the research journals which are published by Emerald. Wiley is having its own database, data source where you can get all the research papers which are published by Wiley. Similarly, ProQuest is one thing which is giving so many research works published by almost many publishers, almost all the publishers I should say. All those research papers are available in the ProQuest. Not only the research papers, but also the theses, documents, other kind of documents, reports, even what you can say, conceptual papers. All those things are available in ProQuest. EBSCO also does the same. So these kind of databases, if you give your keyword, it will be able to give you a lot of research works which are published. But you have to filter it. That is a different process that we will not get into now. At present, I'll tell you in a couple of minutes after. So the keyword which you are giving it in the databases will help you to understand, or will help you to get how many research papers or how many research documents are available within that particular keyword. In that, you can select whatever you wanted to select. You can filter it also. For example, suppose I don't want to get some research papers which are published in ordinary journals. I want to see the research papers which are published in scholarly journals only. Then you can filter it. Suppose if you want to restrict your research papers relevant to a particular field alone. For example, the same concept might have been done in different fields. Example, application of genetic algorithm in stock prediction model. So here, what they have done is, the importance is going on to the genetic algorithm, influence of genetic algorithm, or application of fuzzy logic in equity price behavior, deduction of equity price behavior. So here fuzzy logic is the getting the importance. But people like us who are doing research in commerce and management may not be interested in all these kind of things. Rather, we will try to analyze the influence of a risk on the equity price, or the risk on the returns from the equity shares, or otherwise we can say something like a beta, or the conventional ratios, how they are influencing the equity returns, something like that. So in that case, we can exclude the research works or research papers which are published in computer science or mathematics related research works, and we can exclusively select those research which are published in our domain, like commerce, management, economics, these kind of things. That way we can go for selection of the research works also. That means by using keyword, you can get umpteen number of enormous amount of documents. Out of that, you can filter it and you can select those research papers which are relevant for you. Then you can also go for one more method. Something like, if you are able to find out, sir, one particular researcher has done research work, and if I go to his research work, he is able to give, or the papers which are published by him, out of those research works, some of the research works are having high amount of citation. That means it is frequently referred or cited by other researchers. So if you look at that particular paper, or those kind of papers which are having high amount of citation, then using that cited, or those papers which are cited, or those papers which are highly high number of citations, which are having high number of citations, you can select those papers and then you can review it. That is also another way with the help of which you can select the literature. Then another thing is snowball technique. So snowball technique in the sense, first I will go for a research paper. In that research paper, I will see what are all the research work which are reviewed. Then from that, I will go for the other research works which are cited in that. Then I will collect all those research papers. Then using those research papers, what all the research works which are cited in those research papers, I will go for collecting all those research papers. Likewise, it will be something like, as we study in commerce and management, economics and all, we study about the snowball sampling. No? The same way, by using one research work, or by getting into one research work which is published recently by a noted scholar or by a noted researcher, then using that research work, what are all the research work which are cited in that particular paper, we can collect. That way we can go for a back reference. That means we can refer the literature which are having earlier research works, and then we can go for keep on collecting all the research works which are published in that particular field. This way, if you do that, you will be able to collect a good number of research papers which are already published, and that can be used for the purpose of reviewing or preparing your review of literature chapter. This process, sir, how long we have to do that, sir? If you do that continuously, at one particular point of time, we are not able to get any new research work. Otherwise, you can say the unfound research works are not there. Any research work which I am going to search from the other papers are already available with me. If you are reaching that particular situation, in that case, you have collected almost all the research works relevant to your paper. So simply what I am trying to say here is, you can use digital library, you can use databases, you can use high citation score papers also, or you can use snowball technique also to collect all the research works relevant for your particular study. But how long you have to do that if you are going for a back referencing like snowball technique? In that case, you have to search continuously until you are not able to find out your research paper which is already available with us. That means until you are not able to find out any new research paper, which are published earlier, till that time, if you search, then and conclude, if you are able to conclude, yes, whatever research paper that I am referencing in a paper that is already available with me, or whatever new research work that are given, or whatever research paper which are cited in that paper is available with me. That kind of conclusion, if you are going, or if you are able to arrive at, then you have collected all the relevant literature for your work. But this process, most of the researchers, they do not follow. Simply they go and collect whatever research work which are available to them, and what they do is, these are all the research work. We have collected literature which are available to this extent. That means 100 research papers have been reviewed, or 60 research papers have been reviewed. That is how they do that. So now the traditional literature review itself has become a serious work. When you do that work, it will take at least 3 to 4 months time to do all these kind of things, like using the digital library, or using the keyword databases, or citation score based on the citation score of the papers, or snowball technique, or back referencing, whatever it is. If you use that, it will take a lot of time for you. But there is no other way you have to do that. In addition to this, if you are going to select the gray literature, bibliometric databases, that is another part. Something like gray literature, as I told you, it is not available in the published journals or published magazines or periodicals. In that case, selecting them is not that easy, or collecting them is not that easy. What are all the papers which are presented in conferences, which we do not know? Unless otherwise we go to that institution and collect that paper which are kept as a compendium, or which are kept as a, what you can say, an anthology of the research papers which are presented in the conference, or a kind of collection that they are maintaining it in the university library or in the departmental library. It is not that easy for us to collect the gray literature. But anyhow, you have to make an attempt to collect the gray literature also. Then bibliographic databases. So some bibliographic databases also are available. You can search for that. If you do this, in addition to that, you can use, in addition to the digital libraries, when you go for journals which are most frequently publishing, citation, snowball techniques, bibliometric databases, repositories, from all these selected sources, if you are able to collect the literature, in that case, your collection of literature is complete. In the process of using the keyword, again there is a problem. Normally we go just simply give a keyword. Keyword in the sense, for example, I wanted to study about the influence of corporate governance on financial performance. I am taking it as a very raw title. I'm not going for a specific title. I'm taking something about the influence of corporate governance on the financial performance. If that corporate governance and financial performance, or the influence of corporate governance on financial statement fraud, or linkage between linkage between corporate governance and financial statement fraud, something like that. That means in what way the corporate governance in a company or in companies are having an impact on the financial statement fraud. The linkage between these two. Now, the keywords, if I simply use the corporate governance, it will give me research works which are unnecessary for me also, or which are not relevant for me also. Suppose if I give financial statement fraud, in that case, it will give me research works which are carried out on financial statement fraud. A lot of research works are available. So now, this will not be a right kind of thing for me. So what we have to do is, we have to do we have to do an identification of keywords that I have to use. These keywords may expand to include other terms also. For example, if I say my keyword is corporate governance and financial statement fraud. Suppose if I want to do research work which are based on the secondary data, that means corporate governance and its influence on, assume this way, financial performance with respect to profitability, or with respect to the solvency or market performance, something like that. Then I have to expand my keywords with something like corporate governance within quotes and financial performance, and within quotes I have to give profitability or market performance, something like that. I have to expand the terms. If I use all these keywords simultaneously, then I will be getting the relevant research work which I wanted to do that. Then, while selecting the keywords also, you have to be very careful about the spelling variations. For example, something like behavior, corporate board behavior, assume this way, board behavior, or company board behavior. Company board behavior, company will have the same spelling, board will have the same spelling, there will not be any difference at all. But when it comes to the matter of behavior, the word behavior can be spelled in two different ways. BHAVIOUR can be there, OR also can be there. So spelling variations would be there. In that case, you have to carefully look into the spelling for the words, keywords that you are going to include. So spelling variations which we are going to use it in your in the search criteria are to be very carefully chosen, and you have to use it. Then sometimes singulars and plurals also have to be very carefully used in the search keywords. Suppose personality, personalities. If you use personality and if you avoid personalities, then that will give you research work which are having personality alone. Personalities would not be there. That way, when you are doing a search in your search for your research related research works or literatures related to your research work, you have to be very careful about the singular and plurals also. Then, when using the combination of words, you have to be very, very cautious where to use or where to use not. All these things you have to carefully use. If you do that, then your search would become very meaningful, and you will be able to get a list of relevant research work which are to be reviewed by you. Then abbreviation symbols, which when you are using it, be careful about that also, because abbreviations normally limit your research works, limit your research searching. So as far as possible, when you are using abbreviation, within quotes give the abbreviation, as well as within quotes you give the full form of that concept also. So if you do that, naturally it will be easy for you to collect research works relevant for your study. So while doing the traditional literature review itself, you have to take care of all these pitfalls or all these caution that you have to be very serious about. You have to be very serious about. Then, while doing this, after doing all these things, or after collecting these research works, another way of finding out, yes, I have done that, I have done maximum, or I have done optimum. How do we do that? How do we do that? This checklist given by Jason and Madsen and Lacy, they have given a checklist. You can make use of this checklist for the purpose of identifying or for the purpose of confirming whether I have done my collection of literature properly or not, whether I have completed my collection of literature or relevant literature for my research work is perfectly or not. That we cannot say perfectly, at least to an extent, whether I have done it properly or not. That way we can say. So for these things, you have to prepare this checklist. Prepare the checklist something like, have I searched all the appropriate sources when I am doing my research collection or collection of related literature, whether I have collected from all the appropriate sources or not. So you have to confirm these are all the various appropriate sources. All those sources I have used or I have searched in all these sources. You have to be very careful about that. Second thing is, are there any gaps in the information sources searched? For example, suppose I might have searched up to 2020. Now it is 2024. Whether there is any gap in the time, whether there is any gap in the information sources. For example, I used some databases which are available or which were subscribed little earlier, or maybe 5 years before, and I have collected the research works from that database or from that source, which may not be useful now. So you have to see whether there is any gap in the information sources which I used or which I searched for my literature. Then, have I used complex search statements as required by individual databases? When I am using a particular database, I may be using some search statements or keywords. Whether I used any kind of, correct kind of complex research statements. When I'm using complex research statements, you have to see that whether you have done it properly or not. That way also you have to verify. And then, if you ask yourself, could any improvements be made to the searches? Is there any possibility of further improvement? And if you are able to conclude, no, there is no possibility of further improvement, then you can be satisfied with your collection of literature. So, in addition to that, have I identified all the relevant references, whatever references that you wanted to collect, whether you have identified all the relevant references, that also you have to verify. You have to verify and say that, yes, I have collected all the relevant references. In addition to that, have I used both full text and bibliography databases? That means, what are all the full text which are available to me, I have to collect all those things. In addition to that, bibliographic databases which are available, that also I have to collect and find out, yes, I have to confirm then, yes, both full text and bibliographic databases have been collected by myself. In addition to that, finally, you are supposed to look into whether you have defined any exclusion criteria to weed out the literature that is not required or that is not desired for your research work. Weeding out is very, very important. Weeding out is very, very important. That means, after collecting, when you are doing the collection, what are the works that you have excluded? What are all the things which you don't want to have? These are the things which are not relevant for my study. As I told you earlier, something like when the research work is related to determinants of equity share prices or what you can say, identifying the behavior of, examining the behavior of equity share prices, something like application of fuzzy logic, something like application of genetic algorithm, something like application of any other algorithm, hybrid algorithms which are used for the purpose of predicting share prices, something like that. That and all may not be relevant to my research work. In that case, I have to say, yes, research works which are focusing on mathematics or which are focusing on algorithms, which are focusing on computer studies are not included in that. I have taken only those research works which are published in this kind of journal or which are focusing on the company fundamentals, which are focusing on industry fundamentals, which are focusing on economic factors, something like that. You have to say that this is what I have included, these are the things which I have excluded. That also you have to clearly mention In that case only, your literature review will become a systematic one. Otherwise, it won't be a good literature review. That you have to be very careful about this also. In this case, after collecting the literature, for reading the literature, two popular techniques are available. It is not only collecting the literature. Till now, just I told you about what all the research works that you have to collect, how we have to collect, how to confirm that you have collected all the research work that is essential for the research work or for the thesis or for the paper, whatever it is, whatever may be the research work that you are working on. So, till now, we have seen how to choose the relevant literature which are essential for the purpose of reviewing, how to collect all those research works, how to classify them. That is how I have told you, or that is how we have discussed. Now, another problem is after collecting, another step, otherwise I say, I don't want to call it as a problem, but naturally we should say that it is a problem, but still, I don't want to call it as a problem. Let it be, the next step is reading out or studying, not reading, rather I should say studying the research works which are essential for our research work. Whether it may be a thesis or it may be a research paper. So whenever I say research work, you can put it as, or you can substitute it as thesis, or you can substitute it as a dissertation, or you can substitute it as a research paper also. Nothing wrong in that. So in that, they are talking about two popular reading methods or studying techniques. Reading method or studying techniques. What are they, sir? First technique is EECA. That means examine, evaluate, establish, compare, and argue. Then SQ3R, survey, question, read, write, and review. So the WRIT, write, they make it as R, write, something like that. Don't worry about the abbreviations, but you have to see the methodology which is adopted for the purpose of reading the collected literature or collected research works. So in the process, you can go for first method, which talks about examining whatever research work that you have done, or sorry, whatever research work that you have collected. If you examine it, some of the research work which you don't want to read thoroughly, something which with the abstract itself we may be able to understand, yes, this is the research work. Then evaluate how far it is relevant for your research work, that you can evaluate. In the process, you can see what kind of research work, what kind of research approach they have adopted, what are the variables that they have used, what are the, data sources that they have used for the purpose of doing that research work. You can evaluate whether they have done it properly or not. So, the relevance you can examine, the process adopted by them you can evaluate, and after that you can establish, yes, they have done this kind of research work and they have found out this. This is how you can establish it. Yes, this is a good research work, reasonably a good research work. But despite that, you can make a comparison also. Something like, despite all these findings or despite all these proof, etc., you can make it as a comparison with another research work, saying that with this research work, they are saying this is the thing which has been proved. But whereas the other one or the recent one, it says it is not so. That kind of comparison also you can make. And in addition to that, after making a comparison, you can argue which one is correct. That way, if you make a critical evaluation, a critical examination, your review of literature portion would become a good research, good review of literature. Otherwise, simply if you describe, that may not be a right kind of literature review. So, you have to examine, you have to evaluate, you have to establish, you have to compare, and finally you have to argue. So, if you are able to do for each and every research paper that you are reviewing it, in that process, you will be able to make a good literature review. Otherwise, your literature review may not be a right thing and it will be questioned by examiners. And similarly, survey, question, read, write, and review. You can think about what kind of research work that you have collected, question it, read it, write about what they have done and review it. That is also another method. But I would suggest the first one as the better one when compared to the second one. Then if you look at most of the good researchers, now they are using a matrix method. This is very simple also. In a way, if you follow this method, it would give you a easy way. It would give a very, very easy way of doing the research work also. The matrix method of literature review. So the matrix method employs the use of a review matrix. What is that review matrix? Just I will tell you within a couple of minutes. I will tell you what is that. But understand, this matrix method helps you to identify what are all the constructs which are used, what are all the variables that they have used, what are all the methodologies adopted by the earlier research works, all these things in a tabular form, in a very, very tabular form. This you can prepare in a Word document, or you can prepare it in a Excel spreadsheet also, or you can prepare it in a notebook also, something like that you can do. But this matrix method will help you a lot in completing your literature review and synthesizing it later on. So that's the reason why I would suggest, when compared to any other method, this matrix method, at least you try to incorporate this matrix method in your literature review, so that your literature review would become a better one. And go to this, just matrix method form, which I am trying to give it as an example with my own research work. Suppose I want to do a research work on financial well-being of marginalized communities. And the role of fintech, the role of fintech. Of course, this is already published research paper, therefore I don't have any hesitation in sharing it with you. So if I want to review this kind of research work, first I am selecting a paper. As in this way, I have collected the paper. When I am reviewing the paper, I am able to find out one paper written by Gafoor and Amilan. Yes. This paper is published in Scopus indexed ABDC B category journal, which is having a very high citation also. This paper is published in the journal called as International Journal of Social Economics. Now see the second column of this table. I hope everyone is able to follow the table very easily from your system. The title of the journal, the title of the paper, and the journal name. See the title: Fintech Adoption and Financial Well-being of Persons with Disabilities, the Mediating Role of Financial Access, Financial Knowledge and Financial Behavior. Now, this is the title. From which journal? International Journal of Social Economics. Who are the authors? The first column says Gafoor and Amilan. Go to the purpose of the study. The third column, which you can prepare it as the purpose of the study. Here you can see it is, what does it do, or what does that paper want to do? What does that paper want to do? If you look into the purpose, the paper analyzes the effect of fintech adoption on the financial well-being of persons with disabilities, considering the intervening role of financial behavior, financial access and financial knowledge. That means, for what purpose this research work has been carried out is clearly mentioned by reading your research work, by reading the research work. So if you read the research work, you will be able to understand the purpose for which the research work has been carried out. What type of study that it is. It is an exploratory study. How far these variables or these constructs are influencing the financial well-being of persons with disabilities. That is the that kind of exploration is taking place. So type of study or the design you can explain there. Then results and conclusion. What kind of result or what kind of conclusion that the paper has arrived at. If you look at that, here I have mentioned it as fintech adoption helps in developing the financial well-being of persons with disabilities by enhancing the financial access and financial knowledge. So fintech influences the financial well-being of persons with disabilities by enhancing the financial access and financial knowledge of the persons. So the people, those who are suffering from mobility, they are able to get better financial access, better financial knowledge, through which they are able to get a better financial well-being. So this is the conclusion. Then what is the implication of that? That means out of this, what the paper is trying to convey, or what the paper is trying to suggest, or what from that what we can take it as a what you can say outcome of that particular study. If you look into this, it says that the implications or findings. If you look into that, evidence that developing disabled-friendly fintech tools can enhance the financial access, reduce inequality, and improve the financial well-being of persons with disabilities, which would be helpful for public policy makers. So the implication is you have to create the fintech products or fintech apps which are disabled friendly. Otherwise, you can say people those with a disability also can make use of that kind of fintech apps, which will be helping them to enhance their financial well-being. So government can take a policy decision now. Limitations. Here, what are the limitations? Of course, you can criticize or you can bring out, or after reading the research papers, you can see what are the limitations that you are able to identify. You can write down all those limitations here. So population is restricted to certain group. That means it is related to only people those who are affected by locomotor disability. It does not discusses about the people those who are having visual impairment. So it does not discuss about people or the population who belongs to mental disability or mentally differently abled persons. That kind of coverage is not there. So it talks about the people those who are having locomotor disability alone. Then geographical coverage is also restricted to a particular place. That means it does not cover any other region other than Kerala. These kind of criticisms you can write down as limitations. If you prepare this matrix, this is the first paper. Similarly, you can see or you can prepare other papers for other papers also which you are reviewing. That means whatever paper that you have collected, if you are able to read or if you are able to study all those papers and prepare this kind of table for all the research papers. So in that case, what would happen? Automatically, it will have several rows. Of course, in this, I am having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 columns, and you can add. If you want to add some more, something like what in the case of type of study and design. No, after that, you can also have the constructs used, the variables used in each constructs. That also you can include. So you can go for all the research works which are reviewed by you in this format. If you prepare, then the review of literature will become a very structured one, very structured one. So if you want to make further columns, you can add that. Whatever column that you wanted to have for your reviewing or for the purpose of reviewing the research works that you have collected, you can do that. So it depends upon the specific scope of your work. Then the matrix table allows for broad sources of publication, which helps identifying the repeating authors, journals, or institute of affiliation. Something like if you prepare, you will be able to find out the same author might have published several papers, or the same kind of variables might have been used, or same kind of construct they might have used, or same kind of methodology might have been used, or from same journal, many research works that have been published. So you will be able to identify who is the good author or who is a researcher who have published a lot of research works in your area, or what kind of journals or which journal is publishing a lot of research papers in your area. And in addition to that, you can also in some cases you can identify, if you are adding one more column, the institute of affiliation, which institute has published a lot of papers in that also you can get into. So this way, if you are able to prepare a matrix, this matrix method, if you use this matrix method, you can get a comprehensive idea about all the research works that has been published and reviewed by you for the purpose of preparing your literature review chapter. So you can see that while doing this, you have to be very careful about unnecessary columns you should not include. That means the columns which are irrelevant, you should not include. The research works that are published in peer-reviewed journals, if you are reviewing it, take it as a separate category. The research works that are published in gray matters or gray areas or gray sources, You take it as a separate category. You do it in that way so that your literature review portion of the thesis would become comprehensive. When you are after reviewing this, the next part is writing the review of literature chapter. Otherwise, you can say writing that your own review. So while doing that, you have to organize your ideas. How you are going to do that? That is what given here. Must be clearly organized in a logical manner with headings and subheadings. What are all the headings that you wanted to have? For example, fintech adoption and financial well-being. In that itself, you may be having fintech adoption and financial well-being of persons with locomotor disability, fintech and financial well-being of persons with what you can say visual impairment, or fintech adoption and financial well-being of marginalized people like street vendors or Dalit and Adivasis, or something like. You can also make such kind of subgroups and make all those subgroups clearly and logically, so that when you write the literature review, it will tell you exactly what kind of groupings that the research, or what are all the areas in which this kind of research works have been carried out, how far that research work has provided a solution to the existing problem to that particular group. So that is the reason why I say that, or I am reiterating that, when you are writing, make it very clear. What is the heading to be? What are all the subheadings to be? That you have to be very clear. Then introduce the broader topic, its relevance and application, and point out the gaps in literature or shortcomings of the existing research work. While doing this, introduce the broad topic. That means financial well-being. Its relevance and application. What is that? What is the relevance of financial well-being? What is the application of that, or why it is needed? Something like that. And point out the gaps in the literature and shortcomings of the existing research. So after reviewing that, you can exactly tell what are all the shortcomings of the earlier research work by looking into this kind of matrix table. Or using this matrix table, you can say from the literature limitations itself, you can identify, okay, these are all the limitations of this particular study, these are the limitations of all these kind of studies, and therefore you can clearly pinpointly say that these are the shortcomings of the existing research or limitations of the existing research. Then writing it also will become very easy for you. To say that these are the limitations. And finally, if there is any subfields, they also need to be introduced in an organized, easy to follow fashion. Do that way. If you do that, then it will be easy for you to complete the literature review, or reading the literature review and making or taking note of all those research works. Yes, sir, we have done it. Then what should we do? If it is an analytical work, criticism you have to make. You have to criticize in what way your research work, in what way earlier research works are having some difficulties or having some lacunae, in what way they have not covered a particular aspect, or in what way they have neglected a particular issue, or in what way that those research works are redundant, or in what way those research works are not suitable for the present context. That kind of analysis or analytical work that you have to do, and you have to write it. Suppose if it is a comparative work, in that case, use the words which are relevant for comparison. When you are writing the literature review, that time, if you want to make a comparison, not a general analysis, rather you want to make a comparison, means similar option words are there. Similar options for the sense, when compared to this research work, that research work is having this kind of deficiencies. When compared to this work, the recent works are having these kind of advantage, some kind of similar works. Likewise, these kind of words you can say. Likewise, this particular research work has carried out, or this particular research work has focused research issue related to this particular thing. Something like that, you can use the similar options. You can also use strengthening options, strengthening words in the sense, you can say, this research work, despite all these things, it has proved this, or it has established this. this kind of strengthening words, you can say, some alternative words, some rebuttal words, contrast and contradict words, these kind of things also you can include results and consequences, consequently, or resulting from this analysis, the result is arrived in this way, or this study resulted in two, or this kind of this kind of studies are resulting in two. Something like that you can say the results and consequences. Concluding words, something like conclusively these works are saying like this. These kind of comparative statements or comparative work when you are doing, or when you are making a comparative literature review, use these words: similar options, strengthening words, alternative words, rebuttal words, contradict words, or results and consequences words, or words which are reflecting the conclusion of the study. All these things you can make. If you do that, yes, your literature review writing part is all right. Okay, sir, that's fine. Ultimately, now we have completed the conventional form of doing a literature review. The conventional literature review. Okay, sir, what is the problem in this? In the case of the traditional review, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to give a comprehensive summary of what all the research works that have taken place, what all the research work that have taken place till date. That's it. Nothing more than that. It's a summary review. It's a summary review. In that case, traditional reviews are reflecting the author's subjectivity. That means, what is the subject that I am going to take? From that, I may be choosing my own interested research works. Subjectivity would be there. It does not follow any search protocol. It does not follow any protocol at all. The traditional review is having another problem. The problem is, they do not include a description of how the research review was carried out. That is also not explained. If not previously informed on the topic of research, it is often very difficult to judge, or it is very often difficult to understand what kind of research works have been carried out and what kind of, research works are collected. That is also not that easy. So that way, if you look into the traditional research review or review of literature, traditional research review or literature review, they are having all these kind of difficulties. One important deficiency which normally the modern researchers are talking against the traditional review is, it is not scientific. Very simply, they say it is not scientific. It uses only a little scientific study. It does not use any scientific methodology. And they say that it is a summary paragraph of each individual article. That's it. Ultimately, they are trying to say it is a summary paragraph of all the research work which have been which have been carried out earlier. So it is not scientific. It is a summary paragraph. These two heavy criticisms are made in the traditional literature review. Now we are coming into the next aspect, systematic literature review or systematic review. What is this systematic review? Why it gains more importance nowadays? A systematic review is a review of the evidence on a clearly formatted question that uses systematic and explicit methods to identify, select, and critically appraise relevant primary research and to extract and analyze data from the studies that are included in the reviews. So simply speaking, there is a scientific method. Very simple. That is what I can say. It follows a methodology, systematic methodology to identify, systematic methodology to critically appraise. Systematically appraise not only the explicit method, it uses an explicit methodology, but also it uses an explicit methodology to identify the research work itself. That means, whether you are doing that systematic literature review or I am doing the systematic literature review, both of us will get the same kind of result only. Whereas in the traditional literature review, both of us are, if 5 people are doing, all the 5 people will not get the same kind of output. Whereas in case of systematic literature review, as the methodology formulated or methodology used or clearly identified or clearly defined for the purpose of selecting, for the purpose of reviewing, for the purpose of appraising, and for the purpose of synthesizing. For all these things, they are using a particular clear systematic methodology. So therefore, the defined methodology, when it is used, whether you do that or I am doing it, all of us will get the same kind of output. That is the advantage of systematic review. So that is what given here. When we do that systematic review, what we will be getting it? It will make us to keep updated of all the previous and new research work. Systematic literature review only will help us to do this way. When there exists a wide range of studies, the key questions remains unanswered. So there are so many research works. Using those research works, there may be some issues which are still unanswered. So how those questions can be answered with the help of reviewing the literature, that we can do with the help of systematic literature review. Then it helps us to identify, it helps us to systematically map out what has been studied, allowing researchers to identify the gaps in the knowledge or areas where the further investigation is required. When you do this kind of systematic literature review, that helps you to identify the gap and what is the further investigation that is required. That also it will help you to identify. That systematic literature review or systematic review will help you to identify that. Then to draft guidelines for health and social interventions or treatment management, it will also help you to draft the guidelines for interventions, for treatments in the sense you have to understand this way, what kind of treatment that you wanted to give for the variables or the relationship, that kind of thing that you have to understand. Because this literature review, systematic literature review is specifically used, mostly it is used in medical science. Now that has been used in all the social sciences also. That is the reason why they are using the word social interventions, treatment management, something like that. But you can use that in your social science researches also, to arrive at a consensus where conflicting evidence is reported. So if there is a conflicting evidence reported in different research works, then how we can go for a consensus, or how we can arrive at a consensus, that also can be done with the help of systematic literature review. This is the difference between the narrative review and the systematic review. If you look at the goals, the goal is, in the case of narrative review, is it provides a summary or overview of the topic. But whereas in systematic review, we try to answer a focused review question. In case of question, what is the difference between narrative review and systematic review? If you look into that, we can have a broad topic or a specific question. Hypothesis might not be stated. That means in the narrative review or the traditional review, what we are using it for the preparation of our thesis, you can have a broad topic or a specific question. That's it. But whereas in systematic review, a clearly defined review question using PICO. I'll tell you what is that PICO little later. Just keep it in mind that PICO as a guide. Here, the hypothesis is also stated. That means by doing systematic literature review, we will be able to identify what is the review question that we are going to answer, and how the hypothesis is framed. All those things can be understood with the help of the systematic review. In case of narrative review, normally we will be having one. For example, suppose if I am preparing my thesis, in my thesis, if I am going for a narrative review, I will be having only one author, or I will be the only person who is reviewing it. Sometimes if I am going to publish research papers, I may have one or more. But in case of systematic review, you need to have a minimum of 3 persons. That means who is reviewing it, simultaneously another person will review that, then a referee also would be there. Like that, there will be 3 or more persons would be there. Then protocol, review protocol, identifying protocol, search protocol, identifying protocol, review protocol, all these things would not be there in the case of narrative review. Whereas in case of systematic review, you will be having a peer review protocol or a plan. A peer review protocol or a plan would be there. Sometimes in the narrative review, even though you include identifying protocol, reviewing what you can say, identifying protocol or inclusion and exclusion protocol and all those things, but you may not have the review protocol. In the case of systematic review or systematic literature review, you will have a peer review protocol also. That means how each and every paper is reviewed, there will be a protocol for that. There will be a protocol for that. That protocol will be strictly adhered by all the 3 authors or more number of authors who are involved in that systematic literature review process. So that is the reason why when you are going for the systematic literature protocol or when you are doing the systematic literature review, whether it is done by X, Y, Z or A, B, C or D, E, F, whoever it is or whatever may be the team. But when you follow the systematic literature review protocol as specified in that paper, definitely the result of that review, systematic review or systematic literature review would be the exactly same as that of other persons. So that is the difference. That is the very classic advantage of going for systematic review. Then inclusion and exclusion criteria. Normally, we do not include the narrative review. In narrative review, we do not include the inclusion and exclusion criteria. But whereas in systematic literature review, essentially we have to look into the criteria and we have to state the criteria. What is the inclusion criteria? What are the inclusion criteria and what are the exclusion criteria? You have to clearly mention that. Without mentioning that, you cannot carry out the systematic literature review. Then search strategy, how you are searching the research works, that is also another thing which you have to be very careful in the case of systematic literature review. You have to clearly give a detailed and comprehensive search strategy which you have adopted for the purpose of reviewing literature in the case of systematic literature review. But whereas in the case of narrative review, it is not so. Further, if you look into that, the sources of literature used. Normally in narrative review, we don't go for the exhaustive list. But whereas in systematic literature review, we will give the list of databases, grey literature and other sources. What are the sources which you are using? We will give exactly these are the sources which are used. That exhaustive sources would be given in the case of systematic literature review. Selection criteria. No selection criteria normally would be given in the narrative review, but whereas in systematic literature review, we will give the selection criteria also, otherwise you can say selection process also. That means what are the papers which are selected, how they are selected, what are the criteria used for the purpose of selecting the papers, all those things would be clearly mentioned in the case of systematic literature review. That is the better thing that makes the systematic literature review unique when compared to the other kind of literature reviews. Then appraisal of the study quality, variation in evaluation of the study quality of studies. That means study quality of studies in the sense when we are reviewing it, we may be having different qualities. That and all will not be there. Here, when we are checking that quality of the study, the checklist will be there. Rigorous appraisal would be there. There would not be any deviation. When the paper is reviewed by following the same protocol by 2 or more persons, there should not be any deviation. That is the way the systematic literature review is carried out. Extracting relevant information, that is also another base where you are able to find out the difference between narrative literature review and the systematic literature review. It is not giving any extraction information. Extraction information in the sense, what are you going to extract from the databases, that is not given. But whereas in systematic literature review, it will be very clear and specific also. Synthesizing in the sense, the summary based on the earlier studies that you have reviewed, what kind of summary is given, it will be something like a paragraph. What is the quality of that? What is the influence that you are able to get out of that? That may not be that clear in the case of narrative review. But whereas in case of systematic literature review, clear summaries of studies based on high quality evidence, it will be synthesizing the earlier research works, and finally you will also give a conclusion which are evidence based. Systematic literature review will result in evidence based conclusion. Whereas in case of conclusion under the narrative review may not be that way, may not be prepared in that way. Then in the case of timeline, weeks to months, that means the literature review can be carried out within 1 month or 2 months, something like that. But whereas in the case of systematic literature review, it may take several months. Sometimes it may take years also. But if you are able to prepare one systematic literature review paper, you will get a lot of citation that is there. And requirements, in the case of narrative literature review, if you understand the topic, that is enough. And if you are able to search 2 or 3 databases, that is enough. But whereas in case of systematic literature review, at least one of the authors with good knowledge of the topic, searches done for all the relevant databases. Almost all the databases are to be searched. That means here, it is not mere understanding of the title alone or topic alone, but you have to have a deeper understanding, a very deep understanding about the subject knowledge in which you want to do the literature review. That is the need of systematic literature review. Then value, what is the value of that normal or narrative literature review and systematic literature review? If you look into that, the narrative literature review provides summary of literature on the topic. But whereas in the case of systematic literature review, it provides high quality evidence and that supports what is to be practiced. What is the exact practice that we need to adopt? That would be the outcome of the systematic literature review. So there are different techniques or methods which are available. Prisma is one of the things that we will come to that later on. Now, just if you make another kind of literature review process is scoping review. Scoping review, that means it will try to give you scope of that review. What would be the further scope of the research work? Narrative review, scoping review, systematic review, if you make a comparison, whether there will be any protocol. If you ask that question, narrative review would say, no, we don't have any protocol at all. But whereas in scoping review, there is some amount of protocol will be specified. In case systematic review of literature, there will be a definite protocol. So whether there is any registration of review protocol is needed, in case of narrative review, there is no need for. Scoping review also there is no need for. But in case of systematic review, you can register yourself in Prospero. That is one organization with the help of which you can register your what you wanted to do. That will be the evidence for your work or your attempt to do a systematic literature review. That would be a better thing. That would be a better thing to prove yourself that you are the first person to do that or you are working on that particular area. Then whether it will be explicit, transparent, peer-reviewed search strategy would be very explicit or transparent. Actually, in case of narrative review, it is no. But whereas in scoping review, yes, there is a chance. In systematic review, you would say yes. So standardized data extracting forms, in case of narrative review, there won't be any standardized data extraction forms. But in case of scoping review, yes, it is there. But in systematic literature review, definitely it should be there. Then mandatory critical appraisal, that means what is the form of reviewing the literature review? What is the form of reviewing your literature or the collected literature? In that case, if there is any bias, if you want to remove that bias, what kind of methodology that you have adopted, if you look into that, narrative review will not have any such kind of thing. Scoping review also will not have such kind of thing. But whereas in systematic review, the bias of assessing a particular research paper will be removed because of the usage of defined protocol. And finally, synthesis of findings from individual studies and generation of summary of findings. In case of narrative review and scoping review, it will not be there. But whereas in systematic literature review, you will have the final findings and recommendation based on review itself. Understand? That means the systematic literature review, that process works as a research paper itself. It is not something like reviewing literature alone. Rather, it goes beyond one step and it makes you to have a finding out of this literature review. So these are all the things. Of course, almost now it is 4:30. If you give me another 20 to 30 minutes, I can quickly give you about how to start it, how to proceed with the systematic literature review. Of course, this systematic literature review itself is to be learned in a 1 day or 2 day workshop. In a 1 day or 2 day workshop, such a detailed things are to be presented. But anyhow, whatever possible from my side, just I am trying to give it. That is the reason I made that title as an overview. That's it. We cannot learn everything regarding the systematic literature review, but at least something that we have to understand what is systematic literature review. That is the reason why I gave this particular topic. Also, for when the organizer asked me, okay, sir, I want to do systematic literature review. What should I do? How to start? Very simple thing. First, form a review team. I told you a minimum of 3 persons must be there. 2 persons who are reviewing it and 1 person who can act as a referee. At least 3 persons must be there. Sir, I want to have 4 persons, 5 persons, no problem. A minimum of 3 persons are required. That is the thing. You have to understand that way. Then formation of an advisory group. You have to form a group which can give you an advice whenever there is a difficulty, or whenever there is a need for discussion, whenever there is a need for reviewing what you have done, or whenever there is a need for further discussions for the purpose of approaching or proceeding with a proper approach. Then for that you need to have an advisory group. Need not be authors. At least you should have some experts who are working on that particular area. You can have that those experts as an advisory group. Then timeline. So how long or how far that you wanted to do this work, that a timeline also you have to specify. Then stakeholder engagement. Who are all the people, those who are to be engaged in that? For example, if I am doing research on fintech adoption and its impact on financial well-being of persons with disability, then persons with disability also should be the stakeholder of the study. I have to engage them. Then software, what kind of, there are different softwares which are available for the purpose of doing systematic literature review. What software that you are going to use, that also you have to mention. So if you have all these things, yes, that is the first stage. That is the first stage. Then after doing this, you have to prepare a systematic review protocol. That means on what basis you are going to do this, or what is the guide that you are going to follow, or what is the process that you are going to follow. A well written systematic literature process or a guideline that you want to follow for the purpose of following this. That is what called a systematic review protocol. You have to write down clearly. Then after this, what are the components that you are going to follow if you look into that, or what are the components that you have to follow in that systematic literature review? These are all the components. What is the background in which you want to do that? That means when I am talking about systematic review protocol, remember this is the systematic review protocol. This systematic literature protocol should have all these details. What is the background in which you want to do the research work? What is the description of the intervention? What are the objectives of this particular systematic literature review paper or systematic literature review? What is the method that you are going to adopt? What are the search methods for identification of the early research work that you are going to use? How the data collection and analysis will be carried out? That means in that literature review itself, you will be collecting the data in the sense what are the variables used, how they have analyzed it, all those details you will be collecting it. Selection of studies, data extraction, that also you will do that. How many people have done that work? For example, the economic value added influences the equity return. How many people have proved it? How many people have disproved it? Why they have, how the results have become disproved? How the results are, how the linkage has been disproved? So all these data you have to collect without any bias, without any assessment bias. The measures of treatment effect, how that a treatment is done, all these protocol you have to clearly write and keep it as a protocol to be followed by all the authors of the literature review, systematic literature review. In addition to that, these are all the things are there. That means assessment of heterogeneity, assessment of reporting biases, data synthesizes, risk of bias, etc., etc. All these things. If you want, I will share this PPT with your organizer, and you can take it from him. So this way, you have to do the review protocol. Then after doing all these review protocol, you have to collect the literature, review it as per the protocol. Then you have to synthesize, then you have to report. You have to report that. So if you do that, you will be able to get the works completed as a systematic literature review. So when we talk about a type of systematic reviews, effectiveness reviews, that means in what way a particular variable or a particular construct or particular situations are effective. If I want to find out that, I can go for the literature, systematic literature review. Experiential literature reviews, that means qualitative, how far certain qualitative aspects are influencing. Then cost and economic evaluation reviews. For developing a particular drug or particular medicine, there may be a cost. Several methods are there for doing that. Which method is cost effective? Which method is economically acceptable to us? So if you want to evaluate, then you can go for the systematic literature review, and you can do that kind of literature review also for the purpose of finding out cost effectiveness or economic effectiveness of the drug or any other kind of research aspect. Then prevalence and incidence, diagnostic test accuracy reviews, risk reviews, like that you can have the various types of systematic reviews which are focusing on certain aspects of your area. So just to give you an idea about the work at present we are carrying out with respect to an SLR, that means systematic literature review. That's what I have taken. Just for the sake of, I am not giving the details in full, rather I am giving the gist of that work which we are proceeding with now. What is the research objective for us? That means we are doing a systematic literature review, and when we are doing that literature review, what is the objective of that? Just I am saying that to assess the effectiveness of corporate governance mechanisms in detecting and preventing fraud within organizations. I want to assess the effectiveness of corporate governance mechanism. That means corporate governance in a company or in companies, how far it is effective in detecting and preventing fraud within organizations, that I wanted to analyze. This is my systematic literature review objective. This is the objective. Otherwise, I can say this is my research objective. And in the process, I am asking review question. What are the review questions? Review question in the sense, when I am going to review the literature, what are the questions that I am going to ask? How effective are corporate governance mechanisms in detection and prevention of fraud in organizations? That means I am questioning the effectiveness of corporate governance mechanism in detecting and preventing the fraud in the organizations. How far or how effective the corporate governance mechanisms in detecting and preventing fraud in organization. This is my review question. For that, I may be using a PICO framework. What is this PICO, sir? First P stands for population or the problem. Here the population is organization. That means companies. Intervention. I stands for intervention. That is what I told you. PICO, what is that PICO? I will tell you within a couple of minutes that I told you. Of course, it has gone more than 1 hour. Anyhow, this I stands for intervention. Intervention in the sense, what is the treatment? What is that treatment that you want to give? Implementation of corporate governance mechanism. That is what the treatment. So, what is the population? Company is the population, or companies are the population. The intervention or treatment is implementation of corporate governance mechanism. What kind of corporate governance mechanism is there in each and every company? That is the thing. Of course, then you are making a comparison. Organizations with weak corporate governance mechanisms or organizations with a strong corporate governance mechanism, I am making a comparison. So, when we are differentiating the companies with weak corporate governance mechanism and strong corporate governance mechanisms, we are making a comparison, and when we do that, in the process, what is the effectiveness of these governance, weak governance, or what is the effectiveness of strong governance on detecting and preventing fraud? That is what we are calling it as outcome. So, PICO framework explains about what is the population or the problem that you are taking into, what is the intervention that you wanted to look into, what is the comparison that you want to make out of, and finally, what would be the outcome. So if you mention this framework, then your search will be very focused. Your search would be very, very focused. You will take only the works, corporate governance mechanisms, in the sense you will go for only company form of organizations. You will not go for anything else. And you will go for the corporate governance mechanisms, influence of corporate governance mechanism or effectiveness of corporate governance mechanism only. On what? On prevention of fraud. So you will focus on these three items. In addition to that, you will also look into the comparison that you are focusing on as a research comparison. So if you do that, yes, then you will be raising research questions based on PICO. In organizations, how effective are corporate governance mechanisms compared to weak governance mechanisms in detecting and preventing fraud? That means how effective corporate governance mechanisms compared to weak corporate governance mechanism in detecting and preventing fraud, that you can find out a question, that you can find out as an answer for this particular question. Okay. So identify relevant studies through comprehensive search strategy. Step 1, that means you will look into the population, intervention, comparison and outcomes. That is the step 1. Then identify any keywords and synonyms. This is the second step. In the process, what you do is you search for keywords or synonyms of the keywords in order to collect the literature, like corporate governance, board composition, audit committee, governance structures, governance mechanism, corporate control, internal control, all these kind of things. When you want to use the word fraud, sometimes fraud has trick mark. It says that what kind of suffix that you can have or what kind of prefix that you can have, you have to use all these kind of things. Misstatement, misconduct, misreporting, manipulation, irregularity. You can think about these words also. That means keywords. When you use the keyword for the purpose of selecting literature, you can do all these things. Deduction, deduct, identify, uncover, find. Then of course prevention. When you use the word prevention, prevent, mitigate. See, I have used the spelling like PREVENT, prevent. If I put that asterisk mark, it may be prevention, it may be prevented, or it may be preventing, something like that. Mitigate, it may be MITIGAT. E also can be there, but I put it as asterisk mark, means it will say mitigating, mitigate, mitigation, all these kind of things. So this is how I am using I am identifying the keywords for the purpose of doing my systematic literature review, to collect the literatures which are already published in the area, and construct search string. Here, when I am searching the construct, when I am searching the research works which are published earlier, I may be using some absolute keys which are used for the purpose of selecting the earlier research work. I can use this format. Of course, I cannot practically show you now because the databases that I have used cannot be revealed now. Therefore, I am not showing that now. Maybe I can show it to you if there is any chance of conducting one-day workshop or something like that on the systematic literature review. Then inclusion and exclusion criteria. You can have inclusion criteria, you can have exclusion criteria also. That you have to be you should have. It is not you can have, you should have inclusion criteria, as well as you should have that exclusion criteria also when you are going for the systematic literature review. That means in the case of inclusion criteria, you are specifying what are the research work that you have included. Research articles having keywords mentioned. That means all the research papers, all the research works which are having mentioned these kind of keywords, or which are used these keywords as the keywords of the particular study, or these keywords which are existing in the title of the paper, all those research works have been taken. Then articles published in English language. Articles might have been published in French or Spanish or German or other kind of languages too. But for me, for our systematic literature review, we are taking only the articles which are published in English language, not other languages. Then articles related to corporate fraud. That means the corporate governance may have impact on several other things. But what we wanted to restrict is the articles which are related to corporate fraud alone we wanted to take. These are all the inclusion criteria which you have followed. So that way you can think about this is the criteria for using, this is the criteria for including your research work. This way for your research work, you have to specify what are all the inclusion criteria that you have adopted or that you are going to adopt, and exclusion criteria. What are all the things which you wanted to exclude? What are all the research works which you wanted to exclude? That also you have to mention. Research article not having the keywords mentioned. The keywords which we have used, the keywords which are used. These are the keywords. The research works which are not having any of these keywords will be excluded. Articles not published in English language will be excluded. Articles not related to corporate fraud will be excluded. These are the exclusion criteria. This is another framework which will take a lot of time. Let me not get into that. So this way, when we do that literature review, or when we are doing our process, we are able to identify, see that 226 research papers. There is no duplication. Then if there is any duplication, we will remove it. Then after removal of that, then again, since there is no duplication, we are able to find out, or we are able to stick into 226 itself. Then after reviewing this, many research papers have been reviewed. After screening the other relevant criteria, etc., we were able to remove research works which are not suitable for us, and after screening the titles and abstracts of the records, we are able to find out 131. The remaining process I have not clearly mentioned, but anyhow, these are the steps which are involved in doing the paper which we prepared. So screening the titles and abstracts of the records, we are able to find out. After doing this, we are able to find out 131. Now we download these 131 research papers. We use it for the systematic literature review. This is how we do that systematic literature review. And we can think of the other process also. That means the usage of databases, usage of gray areas, all those things. Once you do this, if you are able to report it properly, you will be able to identify what are all the findings that you are making out of this literature review. That can be your recommendations. This is how the systematic literature review is carried out, and that helps you to give you useful recommendations or useful findings based on your literature review itself. This process, without making recommendations, without making the synthetic analysis, synthesis analysis, if you are able to report up to that inclusion and exclusion criteria, and if you do that literature review, that will give you a very good strength for your thesis. That is how you have to carry out. With that, let me thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity. I conclude my presentation also. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Amilon, for that enriching session on systematic literature review. Your insights have certainly enhanced our understanding and will guide us in our research endeavors. Sir covered what is the literature review and the significance of literature review, searching and collecting of literature, comparison with other research thesis or work, what is the review matrix, research methodology, title of the paper and the purpose of the research paper or work, financial well-being, findings and suggestions, limitations of research work, traditional research review, narrative review, systematic review, and a selection process, conclusion of the study, components of a systematic review protocol, types of systematic reviews, inclusion and exclusion criteria. Thank you, sir, for your valuable information.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, this interaction was a nice experience to me. By thanking the organization or organizers, I am exiting now. Thank you, one and all. Okay. Shall I
you, sir.
leave now?
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now welcome Dr. Sister Shaini, the principal of JMJ College for Women, Tenali, to give her valedictory address.
Good evening, everyone. Distinguished speakers, esteemed participants, and respected colleagues. It is my honor and privilege to address you today as we conclude our national webinar-cum-FDP on advanced research methodology and data analysis in the digital age, held online from October 22nd to 26th, 2024. As we wrap up this enlightening 5-day event, I am filled with immense gratitude for everyone who contributed to its success. This webinar has provided a remarkable platform for fostering connections among academics, sharing invaluable insights, and exploring innovative approaches within the realm of data analysis in our digital age. I would like to extend my hearty appreciation to Dr. G. Sudhakar, our convener, for his tireless efforts in organizing this event. Thank you, Dr. G. Sudhakar. I am grateful to Dr. M. Sambasivudu, Mrs. M. Vanaja, and all faculty members whose unwavering support has been instrumental in bringing this webinar to completion. My sincere thanks go to Dr. Shamil Mary and Mr. Yashwant Dutt for their technical expertise, ensuring that our online webinar ran smoothly from the day 1 to till the end. I express my special thanks to all our esteemed speakers. Dear speakers, your thought-provoking presentations and engaging discussions have significantly enriched our understanding of research methodology and data analysis. I express my gratitude to all participants who joined us virtually from various corners of the country. Your active engagement and enthusiasm have transformed this webinar into a truly collaborative and enriching experience. As we conclude this event, let us carry forward the valuable knowledge and innovative ideas exchanged over these days. May we continue to explore and expand upon these themes in our future endeavors. Once again, thank you all for your contributions and participation in making this webinar a resounding success. I wish you continued success and inspiration in all your future pursuits. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sister, for our valuable and informative valedictory message. Thank you. Now, convener report. Dear esteemed participants and distinguished speakers, I am honored to present the report of our national webinar on advanced research methodology and data analysis in the digital age. Over the past 5 days, we have explored a range of critical topics, enriching our understanding and practice in research methodologies within our digital context. On first day, we commenced the webinar with a prayer song, which was followed by warm welcome address from our principal, Dr. Sister Shaini KP. We then had the privilege of hearing an inspiring keynote address by Professor Sivaram Prasad Ramaneni, who shared invaluable insights on how to identify the research problem in the digital era. His presentation set the tone for our discussions, emphasizing the importance of relevance and innovation in research. Following the keynote, Professor M. Venkateswarlu delivered a session on research methodology and data analysis in the digital era. His expertise illuminated the evolving landscape of research methodologies, providing practical frameworks for effective data analysis. The second day speaker, Dr. Jalil Basha V, spoke on R programming for data analysis in social science research. His session was well received, offering participants hands-on experience with R, a powerful tool for data analysis. The third day speaker, Dr. S.K. Kamuruddin, presented on types of research. His engaging discussion helped participants understand the desired research plagiarism, guiding us in choosing appropriate methods for us inquiries. Next session was carried out by Dr. Kumbi Narsaya S., who addressed publication ethics. His insights were crucial for ensuring integrity and ethical considerations in research publications. In the third day session, Dr. A. Venkataramana, retired professor, led discussions on report writings. His expertise provided participants with essential skills for effectively communicating research findings, an invaluable asset for both academic and professional pursuits. In the final day, we conclude the webinar with the valedictory address by Dr. Shanmugam Amilon, who offered an overview on systematic literature review. His closing remarks emphasized the importance of systematic existing research to inform future studies, encapsulating the spirit of our discussions. Throughout the week, we engaged in rich discussions, shared deserved perspectives, and fostered collaboration among participants from various backgrounds. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers for their invaluable contributions and to all participants for their active engagement. As we move forward, let us apply the knowledge and skills gained during this webinar to enhance our research endeavors in the digital age. Thank you all for being a part of this enriching experience. I look forward to your continued collaboration and exploration in the field of research methodology and data analysis. Thank you. Finally, today's session on systematic literature review by Professor Amilon rounded off an incredibly informative week. We had a total of 150 participants, including professors, faculty members, and research scholars. I extend my gratitude to management and the participants for allowing us to organize this insightful event. As we wrap up today's session, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to all who contribute. Professor Sivaram Prasad for his engaging keynote address, Professor Venkateswarlu for sharing his expertise, Dr. Jeelan Basha V for his hands-on training, Dr. Kamuruddin for enlightening us on research proposal, Dr. Kummi Narsaya for his important talk on publication ethics, Professor Venkataramana for his motivational insights, Professor Amilan for his valuable contributions today. A special thanks to our principal, Dr. Sister Shaini KP, for her unwavering support and guidance. To all participants whose engagement made this program successful, and a heartfelt thank you to our technical team for ensuring the smooth running of this webinar. Lastly, I would like to thank our I extend my gratitude to everyone once again. Dear participants, feedback form will be posted in the WhatsApp group. You are requested to fill the feedback form. Certificate will be sent to your registered mail ID by Monday as per the registration details given by you. Let us look forward to more such informative session in the future. Thank you all once again and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.